Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morphite Ministries live stream number 11. We are live and we are operating and working. Praise God. All right. So we've been talking about the deliverance ministry of Jesus Christ and funny today. Deliverance ministry of Jesus Christ, going through some of the times when Jesus dealt with demons, devils, all that kind of stuff. If you want to see some of the stuff we've talked about already, just go back a few videos, a few live streams, and you'll be able to catch up on that. I think this part of the series started on number 8. No, I apologize. I'm wrong, but I don't remember where it started. Yeah, 8. Wow. All right. So we've done a handful of these already. We're going to keep working on this idea of demons, devils, unclean spirits, and how Jesus dealt with them. We already looked at the baptism of Jesus, how he was tempted. We spent a couple episodes on that, how he dealt with that. We looked at the demonized men of the Gergesenes or the Gadarenes. This is the story you're probably familiar with as where he dealt with Legion. We looked at it from the book of Matthew because we're looking at the early examples. I'm just going to jump in now and we'll just pick one or two examples before we finish off this series, probably in next episode on this idea. But it's just really these Bible studies are to get you started. This is not a complete holistic look at every single time this idea shows up. I'm doing these as doing them live, so there's not a lot of planning that goes into them anyways, but they're not really we don't have no time to go all the way into every single topic. But this is going to be an opportunity for you to see how to study for yourself, an opportunity to get you started down a road, and also to get just an overview of some of the things God has said about a given topic. So most of the time, if you haven't caught up with us already, my name's Sam, and these studies are inspired by things that God has led me to study. And if you hear somebody whining in the background, that's Gus. She wants to participate, but she's not allowed to. You hear that, Gus? Yeah, that's my dog. All right. So let's jump back into this here. And our words are diabolos, what's the other one? Daimonizao, demonized. Let me find the one from this passage in Matthew 8. Devils, here we are. So I'm actually going to look up that because it's someone or something who is demonized. To be demonized. Let me actually. So let me see. Demonized. Daimonion. Yep. Okay. So we're going to look up specifically daimonion. And we're looking at the times Jesus dealt with devils or demons. This fellow did not cast out devils, but Beelzebub. And I didn't realize, I just spaced on that it shows up twice in Matthew 9. The Pharisees says he cast out devils through the prince of devils, and in Matthew 12 that they accuse him of casting out devils by devils. Matthew 12:27. And if I by Beelzebub cast out devils, by whom do your children cast them out? Yeah, because they did have exorcists, and we talked about that in a previous episode, I believe, that the Jews still do have exorcists and exorcisms. Here's one because he's dealing with one directly. Matthew 17:18. Let's go to that. Okay, this is a good one. Let's go to, it's Matthew 17. And we'll start in Matthew 17, verse number 14. And when they were come to the multitude, there came to him a certain man, kneeling down to him, and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is lunatic, and sore vexed, for oft times he falleth into the fire, and oft into the water. And I brought him to thy disciples, and they could not cure him. And Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him hither to me. And Jesus rebuked the devil, and he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart and said, Why could not we cast him out? And Jesus said unto them, Because of your unbelief. For verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say to this mountain, Remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Howbeit this kind goeth not out, but by prayer and fasting. And then he goes on to talk about something else. So we're looking at verse 21 is the end of it, and it starts in verse... And this is right after Jesus has his transfiguration and shows his glory to the disciples. Okay, so 14 through 21. It's Matthew 17, 14 through 21. And what would we call this episode? Jesus deals with a demon that his disciples could not. Jesus deals with a demon his disciples didn't. There we go. In case you can't tell, I like alliterations. All right, so what do we learn from this? So the demon... And what's interesting is the man says, he says that my son is lunatic, it's sort of vexed and all of this. And he actually says, I brought him to thy disciples and they could not cure him. So in other words, it sounds like the man doesn't understand or is not dealing directly with the idea that the lunatic and the vexation and all these issues that his son has is a demonic issue. He almost sounds like he just wants him healed. He sees it as a physical ailment because he says he's sore vexed, he's lunatic, he falls into the fire and into the water. And that's an interesting phrase too. He falls into the fire and into the water. I'm wondering if that is an idiom. Let's see if I can find that out real quick. Where's this? Matthew 17. It might be in here. It might not. Matthew 17. 16, 17. And verse number, what verse is that? 15. I don't see it in here. This is a book, Figures in Speech used in the Bible. Figures of speech, used in the Bible. Let's see, let me double check myself. They use Roman numerals for the chapters, so sometimes you have to think a little bit. Not used to doing that. Okay, that's actually 15, 16, 17, and it says there's a figure of speech used in verse 11. We're not there. Verse 17. Interesting. We may come back to that. I'm not seeing anything direct. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on that. But oftentimes when you see excuse me. We're back. All right. So, what are we looking at? Oh, oftentimes when you see a phrase show up and it might be a little strange, it might be a little, something that sounds like literally, it sounds like it's like a normal sentence, like he often falls into the fire and into the water in English, but it doesn't really make a ton of sense. For example, like, what is he talking about? Why would he mention him falling into fire and falling into water? That might be something to look up. And in fact, let me see here. Sorry, I would be doing this more on the computer, but my computer's still having issues, and it's actually faster in my head to just look it up manually. We're in Matthew chapter 17, verse number 15. I'm going to look at the parallel here. I have a parallel Gospels. Lord have mercy upon my son, he's an epileptic, he suffers terribly. Often he falls into the fire and often into the water. Okay, so there is a parallel passage in Mark 9. In Mark 9 it says, he asked them, what are you discussing with them? One of the crowd answered him, Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a dumb spirit, and wherever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able. That's when he talks about faithless and perverse generation. In Luke chapter 9, verse 38, he says, Teacher, I beg you to look upon my son. He's my only child. Behold, a spirit seizes him, and he suddenly cries out. It convulses him till he foams and shatters him and will hardly leave him. So neither one of the parallel gospel accounts mentions this idea of falling into the fire and into the water. So that would be something, anytime you see something like that that just kind of sticks out, it's kind of weird, that's something you'll probably want to dig into a little bit, because there's a reason why it's said that way, or there's a reason why that idea is mentioned. I'm trying to think, falling into the fire and into the water, where we could find out more about that. Customs, possibly in Manners and Customs. Let's look here. Matthew chapter 17, verse number 15. Nope, doesn't have anything listed here. It's another great handbook. Mine's obviously very beat up, very used. I got it from, I think, a hand-me-down. It's called Manners and Customs of the Bible. And there's different ones for all of these, like Manners and Customs are people and places of the Bible, or figures of speech. You'll find different collections or different versions, dictionaries, that are written. I don't know enough to say, well, you definitely want to use this one or you don't want to use that one. But a good place to start is just to get one. You can use one online most of the time too. Let me see here. I think how else I could look that up directly. Because, for example, if you just did a search of fall into the fire and into the water, let's see what happens. If I can do a search, fall into the fire and into the water. Let's see what happens. What comes up? They give us a direction on that idea. The boy with the demon. So obviously that passage comes up. Yes, I wanted the water. Oh, I just copied what? Here's a good tool. I've shown this before, King James Bible Online, where you can go here to similar verses. I like doing that and seeing if there's anything similar. There was a lunatic with the palsy. Job. I don't see anything about that in there, though. Oh, so it's just talking about devils, basically. Donatarium. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it does kind of stick out to me. That's why I'm mentioning it. Let's see, there was one here. It said, and the dog has seen the cat. What does Matthew 17:15 mean? Maybe they have a little bit of a direction or something they mention here on here. And everything's running slow. mouth. As it says here, as the father notes, it often happens in especially dangerous moments. So I guess that could be the implication there. The fact that he mentions the fire and the water is that this takes hold of him and then dashes him down or pushes him or throws him into a dangerous situation when those are available, right? So that would be, I think, one thing about saying about it there, simple interpretation of it. Moonstruck is the Greek word for seizures. Ooh, that would be a good thing to add in here. That's the literalization, right? Moonstruck. To be epileptic. So here we see that this idea of possibly epilepsy or being moonstruck, sublunar, subject to change and decay. That's interesting. I'm going to put these extra definitions in here, because lune is Selene or Selene, and this is Seleniatsomai. So it's interesting that the actual Greek term has these things being related. Let's do this, because that looks to be sublunar. Alright, so he is moonstruck or lunatic, it says here. Sore vexed, he suffers terribly. For he often falls into the fire and often into the water. Sore vexed, what's our word there? Kakos. Pasque. So he's suffering. In the New Testament, it's always an unpleasant, nearly always a reference to an unpleasant experience, okay? So here's where we're starting from, right, with this boy, is he is experiencing suffering, he is enduring something horrible, and that's, it goes back to the whole idea of deliverance ministry or casting out demons, dealing with demons, is what's the point of it? Why are you doing it? It's to deliver someone, it's to help them, it's to free them from things like this, from these moonstruck, epileptic, lunatic episodes that this boy is subject to. Once this demon is dealt with, he will no longer be subject to that. He no longer has to deal with that in his life. And that's the whole point of healing him. The disciples could not cure him. I'll put that as a... So the boy is moonstruck, as it says. He's sore vexed. He's suffering. The disciples could not cure him. That's in verse 16. And the word for cure that we have here is it's like therapy. Interesting. Therapeuosai. So they didn't have what it took to heal him, to cure him from his issue. All right. And Jesus' response is interesting. Let me see if there's any of these cross references that we want to look at here. That's just the showing the parallel passages. But they were not able to heal him. Jesus answered, You unbelieving, faithless, rebuke for lack of faith. It's Old Testament roots. Yeah. Jesus answered and said, herein supplies with previous how long? Until when will I be with you? Until when must I put up with you? So when he says, oh, faithless and perverse generation, my question is he talking to, he's probably talking to the disciples, because the man is not expecting, or there doesn't seem to be any expectation that the man would be able to deal with this issue, right? He's not saying, he doesn't tell the man to deal with it, or, oh, you should have done this. His disciples are the ones that he tells what they should have done, or what they could have done differently, or why they were unable to accomplish this. So from the passage, the context, I would say he's speaking to the disciples, saying they're faithless and perverse. So Jesus rebukes the disciples. It's verse 17. We'll double check that. And another reason I say this is because in context of the rest of the Gospels, this was a pretty constant rebuke or chastisement from Jesus to the disciples was, where's your faith? What happened to your faith? Why don't you have enough faith? He just constantly was challenging them to grow in their faith, to have more faith, to actually act out the faith that they have. Jesus rebukes the disciples for the lack of faith. And it also, the word perverse, of course, we have a idea today where we almost automatically, when someone says someone is perverse, we apply it to like sexual deviancy. And while that word can mean that, it doesn't necessarily mean that. And obviously in this context, I don't think Jesus is just suddenly like calling them out and being like, it's because you're sexual deviance in your mind that you were unable to do this. And because the word, let's look at the word he uses here. Twisted. So when he says, oh, faithless, so you are apistos. So pistos is faith, and apistos means not faith, so unbelieving. So you're not believing. Lack of trust. One who does not believe, right? You're not acting in belief. And perverse generation. So the word for perverse here is diastrepho. So dia means against or away. That's like a turning. Diadem, the idea of like there being angles on it. Diastrepho means to pervert. So strepho, I'm guessing, is the root word that means to be on a way or something like that. Yeah, here we are. Dia means though, through, because of. Oh, strepho means to turn. So dia means through or because of. Strepho means to turn. So it's someone or something who's turned away. So in other words, you're turned away from the way you should be thinking, the way you should be dealing with this, the way things you should be doing. So he's not saying you're perverse in the sense that you are committing some unspeakable act, or your mind is twisted in the sense that you are right now engaged in something horrible. Although, it's horrible in the sense that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But he's not accusing them of a specific sin as much as saying your way of thinking is wrong. And that's what he's saying. Generation, that's a whole thing. Generation, the word, what does he use here? That's interesting. Oh no, that's the okay. Where's the word generation? Oh, there we are, Genea. Okay. Genea means one's own kind or race, descendant, figuratively age, period of time. So this word does not necessarily mean, as we often use it in our modern parlance, the idea of a generation. We think of like Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and the Boomer generation, these things. That's how we use that word. That word, though, that idea of a generation is literally something that is generated from something else, right? So it says here, one's own kind or race, a descendant. That descendant is not necessarily only physically, biologically, genetically descending from one to the next, right? So something that I wrote, for example, if I write something, or a video that I make, is a generation from me, right? I generated it, and it is a continuation of my essence in some form. So that is more of the idea built into this word of generation. When you see it showed up in the King James translated as generation, and usually most other translations I've seen, it's the same word used for that, genea, or I can't remember off the top of my head the matching Hebrew idea or word. But it does not necessarily only strictly mean a physical, like father-son relationship, right? And that's something that it does mean that, it can mean that, it includes that idea, but it also includes the idea of just one thing generating from another. So a generation is talking about lineage, talking about descendancy, talking about a kind or a type. And so when Jesus says you're faithless and perverse, he's not saying your parents were faithless and perverse. That's why you're faithless and perverse. Boy, we're out of time already. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is you come from that heritage spiritually. You are coming from a place of unbelief and wrong thinking, and that's why you're still suffering. You're still dealing with the issue that you're dealing with, is because you have not been regenerated, right? You're not coming from a place of faith, coming from a place of correct thinking. So we're out of time today, and so I'm going to leave off here in verse 17, and we'll talk more about that next time. Appreciate you joining. I know today was a little kind of all over the place. Got my dog over here throwing up. I got computer issues still going on that I think I know how to fix now, but never have time to fix them. So praise God, we'll just keep on plugging, and we'll do things as we're able to. Thanks for joining us, and appreciate you subscribing, liking, sharing this with friends and family. Let me know, throw some comments out there. I don't think I've gotten any comments from anybody. So, I take that back. My brother and my wife have both left comments. Thank you very much. But for many of the rest of y'all who are watching, I'm not hearing anything. So I'd like some feedback. It's like, hey, we're here. Hello. It sounds great. It sounds terrible. Something. Just let me know where you're at. If there's a specific topic you think would be interesting to do this kind of study with,